All right, I've got this Honda Civic here. Customer just dropped it off. Complaint is that they just can't see too well. This is a factory halogen H11 projector. Pretty commonly used in the Honda assemblies. We know exactly what to expect from this unit. And here we've got the factory halogen fog lights. What's interesting about the Honda Civic is that it's actually got an LED parking light, and that is a cool white color, especially relative to the halogen and halogen bulbs in the low beam and fog lights. So, you know, when customers ask which color temperature should I use, in this case, when it comes to HID bulbs, we generally recommend 6,000 Kelvin. That's got a little bit of the cool white hue to it, and that'll give a really close match, generally speaking, to any LED. Now, a lot of factory LED is more of like a 5,500 Kelvin, but the aftermarket HID systems that are 5,000 Kelvin, they're slightly more neutral and they're less cool, and it'll give a warmer effect. So you can go either way, but our recommendation has usually been 6,000 Kelvin. It does depend on the make and model if you want a relatively uniform look to the front end. We always tell people it's not going to be 100% match, but it's going to be close, and that's acceptable for most people, but you just have to be realistic with your expectations. So, factory projector on the low beam and a halogen small reflector on a fog light, which is very common. People ask us all the time, what do we recommend for this? When it has a projector, the answer is always HID. There is no LED bulb on the market that will perform better optically than a HID bulb in a projector. There's just nothing that outperforms it. No matter what bogus claim you see, how many lumens they're claiming on Amazon, there is no LED bulb that would be better than an HID system inside of a projector. The plus side with HID is you have 3 different color temperatures to choose from. With LED, it's really all the same. It's about 5,500 or 6,000 Kelvin, and you're unable to choose anything. Now, on the fog lights, you could drop in an HID system to match, but it won't be a good solution. The reflector is just too small. You're going to get a lot of glare. The light's not going to be focused, and you're going to get a ton of foreground lighting. Foreground lighting is the light right in front of the car, directly in front of it. You don't want to add too much light there because you want to have distance visibility. So you want your low beams to be brighter than your fog lights, so that way your eyes can adjust and you can see down the road better. So on the fog lights, we have 2 options. You can do a drop-in LED bulb, or you can do a full housing replacement. These days, we have a lot of different options with housing replacements between Diode Dynamics, SS3, and the Elite series. Those are 2 different products. And now Morimoto's got their 4-banger. There's, of course, the Morimoto XB LEDs, but those are sort of old news now, so we don't really recommend those. However, on this specific fog light assembly, we do have a solution that we'll be using it, and we'll show you in this video why we're going to be using it. We are not going to be using a plug-and-play bulb because there are no plug-and-play bulbs that will match the performance with the beam spread when compared to what we're able to install when it comes to a full housing replacement. So the recommendations change based on vehicle type, what kind of optics it uses, reflector or projector. There's so many variables, so it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Contact us if you want to discuss what are the best solutions for your make and model, because there are so many options out there. Don't just assume that your friend used LED bulbs in his Chevy and they're going to work good in your Honda. All right, so we'll show you what we're doing in this video. This way you guys get an idea of how we kind of do things around here, what we recommend, why we recommend them, and show you the performance results. All right, here we are. I'm 25 feet away from the wall. That is our testing distance. That way you can compare and contrast with our videos and other data that you see in our new shop. In our old shop, we were at a longer distance, so don't use that for comparison. This is the proper distance to be testing at. It's 25 feet. These are the low beams. You can see there's a little bit of light above the cutoff, and that's what you call a squirrel finder, believe it or not. People think it's pretty funny. It is sort of an industry term. It illuminates signage without blinding oncoming traffic. You put a brighter bulb in there, of course it'll get brighter. That's what happens when I turn on the fogs. That fog light output is foreground lighting. Do not assume because you're putting in fog lights, you're going to be able to see better down the road. Fog lights aren't meant for that. They're made for directly in front of the car and width, of course. So it's hard to see the width in the shop because we don't have a super wide shop. We have an extra maybe 20 feet to the right of the car where I can show you what that looks like. But you can see the fog lights aren't really well defined. They are coming on, obviously they work. However, we are definitely looking for a brighter solution. However, what we want to do when we put an HID system in, we want to retain that original intensity zone that's right in the center, and that way you can see down the road really, really well. So I have a lux meter with me right now. We're going to take a before measurement of the low beams. The fog lights, they don't really count. You can't really see them too well. So, you know, this is how we would take a measurement at 25 feet. And we're hitting about 130 lux, which is pretty standard for a halogen projector at about 25 feet, okay? I'll install the HID system and the new fog light assemblies, and I'll show you what's going on. All right, let's dive into the HID system first for the low beams. When you get the kit from us, it's going to come just like this. It's Hylux ballasts, Morimoto XB bulbs. Again, the bulbs come in 3 different color temperatures. I believe the main choice here is to go with the 6K, again, to match the LED a little bit better than a 5K, which is a little bit more neutral. Plain white generic boxes, nothing fancy. We get them direct from Hylux. This is the real deal Hylux Tech ballast. These are CAN bus friendly. We like using these because they don't require relayed wiring harness. They don't put strain on your factory low beam wiring and connections because they pull power slowly and safely. This is an additional ground that you can hook up. It's not required to be hooked up. The ballast is really simple. We recommend mounting them with double-sided tape, self-tapping screws. You could zip tie, it depends on the application. I'll show you what I did here. There is no wrong way as long as it's secured. This is a molded connector. In any install of the Hylux system, I want to make sure that once this is mounted, this molded connector is facing down at the ground. That way water can't collect in here, despite what they say about them being, you know, the connections being waterproof on these aftermarket harnesses and pigtail adapters. It's not always the case and water can find its way in, so. All right, let's dive into this bulb a little bit. The bulb, the HID bulb obviously has the amp connections that go into the ballast. The other connector is essentially a transfer connector that goes through the rubber grommet, and it will adapt from the original connection, in this case H11, so it's an H11 bulb, which means it fits H11 base, but it also fits H11 connector. And even though these two connectors look the same, the 9006 connector is not going to be compatible. So it essentially changes the connection from an H11 male to a 9006 female, which can be then plugged into the ballast. In the case of the Honda Civic, we do not need to use this grommet. This can be cut off and you can separate this and to clean it up. If you have a rubber grommet or a cap or a plastic cap or anything covering the low beam, you will want to drill a small hole. We use you can use a drill, drill out a small hole. You can have a hole saw, which we use, I believe it's a 1/2 inch, and you can feed that through. That way it's nice and waterproof. You don't want any water to be able to get through there. The bulb comes apart like this in the casing. Common mistake with the H11 is not removing this piece, and that's just for the shipping container essentially. So you'll remove this, the gray grommet, slip off this white clear piece, put the gray grommet back on. Another reason why HID systems don't always work while I'm here is because polarity must be proper. In halogen, it doesn't matter. You can plug up a halogen bulb anyway, it'll turn on as long as it's being powered. The power needs to be on the correct side of this in order for the ballast to get the power on the input side correctly. So if you plug up your HID system and it's not working, flip this input into the ballast really quick, 180 degrees, See if it works. If it does, great. Flip it back, go back in here, use a pick or a small eyeglass screwdriver, like a flathead, release the pins, flip this connector 180 degrees. That way you have a nice solid connection and everything is working properly. But in the case of the Civic, I'm taking this apart, I'm plugging the bulb in, testing the system and seeing how it works. All right, so just really quick, I'll show you how I make the determination on how to power this up or how it looks without even using a multimeter. So most grounds are either black, brown, or they are white with a black stripe. I believe this colored wire is our positive. That means when the plug is going in here, you want the power on the right-hand side, okay? So if we take a look at this, if power is on the right-hand side, that means the black wire would be getting power. Whenever it comes to a ballast input, 9006 input in the HID industry, power is always on the right-hand side, which means I know that the power is on the wrong side currently. I will go in here and flip this connector around after I loosen this up. A little hard to show you one-handed, so I'll do it and I'll show you in a moment. All right, so I flipped the connector, super easy. That's going to be a match now for this connector. I've got some dielectric grease in a syringe. I'm going to install that right over here. You don't have to do this. I think it's a good idea just to put a little bit on. And that way because this connector, again, it's got seals in it. I've seen them kind of give problems and it's better to be safe than sorry. But I'll do this in a second and I'll show you how it all looks. All right, you're basically making a loop. Again, factory H11 connector to the input of the ballast. Remember, power is on the right side of that, so that white or silver wire is our power, and that should be matching up with our power here. And that looks like the green wire, as you can see. And then it goes into the ballast, makes a loop, and back into the bulb. The bulb's already installed. I can literally go to the car and see if that turns on. Now remember, HID takes a few seconds to warm up. We're talking like 10 seconds, okay? You're just going to make sure that everything's functioning, everything's working. Initially, it may appear that the halogen is actually brighter. But give a chance for the HID system to warm up. And this is simply a test that you're doing before you go and, solidify the mounting of the ballast, taking a look at everything. This is your chance to get everything set up properly, essentially. Make sure everything's working, make sure you like the color. And that color matches really, really closely to the LED on the side. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than the original one, of course. And now that we're fully warmed up, let's see how it looks. So just off the bat, it looks brighter and fuller. And the camera's adjusting so we don't see those hot spots anymore. But we will take a before, we'll take an after measurement, of course, with the lux meter and show you how everything looks. But you can see the position doesn't change of the height with an HID bulb. Sometimes you see that with an LED bulb, but with the HID, everything remains the same. The output and the beam distribution looks very similar. Everything is just a little bit brighter. Okay. And I'm gonna move to the other side now. All right, so next step is really determining where you're going to place your ballast. I decided to place them right here. You wanna make sure that there's no obstructions, obviously. The kit doesn't come with any tape, but use some good, usually the 3M, the red backing tape is really good. Press it down and clean the area up with alcohol, clean the back of the ballast with alcohol. It is cold right now in the shop. Once I peel this off, I'll use a torch or a heat gun to heat it up a little bit so it gets a little stickier. Press down for about 30 seconds and get that in place, okay? Both my sides are ready to go, and just going to stick it on right here, and then I'll zip tie any loose wires and make sure that molded connector is hanging down, facing down, or just being zip tied in the right direction. All right, so this is what the ballast looks like mounted. Super straightforward. Obviously, we make sure that it clears. You could probably put this in a few other spots, but you want to make sure that it's nicely mounted. This is really secure now. And that connector that I was talking to you about is actually laying down in the correct orientation, so I am not going to touch it. Everything is kind of in this cavity right here, and you could just bunch up the wires, zip tie them, put everything to the side, and the engine bay looks pretty much untouched. So low beams are done. I fully tested everything works, and I'll move to the fogs. All right, when it comes to the fog lights, you could usually just cut the steering wheel and take off whatever hardware is over here, and then take a look inside to see what's going on. I can see the back of the fog light bulb. It's a little hard to see in the video. However, I can tell that this is actually mounted from the front. So that is interesting. That means this bezel will need to come off, and usually it's just a pull and pray type of thing. It snaps in from the front. So I'll do that, I'll remove the bezel, and we'll see where we get. All right, so here's the new Diode assembly on the left. This is full LED. It's important to note there are no actual bulbs to replace. It's a full LED assembly, just like the factory does it on new headlights and fog lights. No more replaceable bulbs, you just have an optic. You can see there's a lens in there. That lens is going to give us a really wide beam pattern, crisp definition. You'll see a nice sharp cutoff line. And that's why no bulb that you install into this factory assembly will compare. It's only going to give off a lot of stray and unfocused light. So really great product from Diode. It's fully adjustable with that adjuster screw. Comes with wiring, so it's plug and play to the original H11. And there's also something called the backlight feature. You can choose to hook that up. It's just an accent light. I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. All right, I slipped in the Diode connector. This is what's called a DT connector, and it's got the factory matching H11 input, but it's also got a feed for a backlight. And the backlight feature, it's an accent. I'll show you what that looks. We're going to run this to the parking lights. Customer can choose not even to hook that up. It's super easy. It comes with an extension, and you just simply run it up to the headlight wiring. All right, we're in. It clipped on super easy, this housing. Now, I've still got to put some things back together, but I slid the bumper cover back into position, and the first thing I'm doing, besides checking that it works, is taking a look at the height. I know that before I button this up, I want to set it originally back down to the original height setting, kind of dial this in. And while I have access to the back of it, that's exactly when I want to go in there, run my back wiring, light up to the headlight assembly. Actually to the parking light. We're going to go right to here, which is the side marker. And I want to aim it before I do all right, so this is our original side marker. The side marker is connected to the parking light wiring. It sits right here. This is the original plug for it. And the Diode comes with a little wire tap, the red one, and then you slide in your connection for the backlight. You zip tie the rest of the wiring, turn on your parking lights, and check out the new backlight. That'll show you how it works. And anytime the fog lights are not on and the low beams are on, you have a nice accent light. All right, what we want to do now is just take a minute and just make sure everything's working properly. We've got the new Diode Elite series on the driver's side. You can see as I get into the cutoff of the low beams, it's very clear that we won't be blinding anybody because the height has not changed. But take a look at the fogs too. They've got the same type of cutoff, and you will never be the one running around blinding anybody with a fog light that is aimed properly, like the Elite series. If you were to put in an HID system or an LED bulb in the fog light, on this original halogen one, you will run around and your fog lights will appear and they will be brighter than your low beams essentially, because it's a lot of straight light. And you can see this one looks crisp. We get close, you can see the lens. It's kind of frosted up top, really nice design details. And that's what gives you this awesome performance. So I'm gonna move over to the other side, wrap this up, and show you guys what it looks like when it's all set. All right, full disclosure, on the passenger side, I failed to notice there is a washer bottle. So you'll definitely need some extra help. Somebody just prying it open a little bit, getting in there. You can remove the 2 screws off of the bezel, and then you have full access to the actual assembly area. There is one more screw that's situated over here, but you'll have to remove the bumper cover. Obviously we have a lift and access to a lift. This was supposed to be more of a DIY video, and it did surprise me a little bit because I thought these bezels would either clip off, but they're actually screwed and clipped on. But like I said, you can still work with it. Just a little bit more difficult to get to. But this took me literally 5 minutes to get out. It wasn't too bad. So now I'll put it back in, align it, and then we'll get right to the end of the video. All right, so let's take a look at how we did. Let's take a look at the final results of everything. Reason why I've got all the new lights off is because I want to show you how the Diode fogs look like. They aren't black, however, they aren't made of any really chrome, so it kind of just blends into the background of the housing. I think it makes it look more sporty, a little bit more aggressive. You almost just notice the fog lights less, unless of course the amber backlight is on, which I'll show you what that looks like. But again, they just have really good design optics. They look really clean, very OEM plus, and they're truly the best OEM style fog light on the market in terms of an upgrade. That backlight can be activated anytime the parking light is on, and the parking light is on whenever the low beam is on. So if you're not using your fog lights at night, you'll have the backlight, which is a cool feature. Again, you can choose to leave that off or disconnect it, or you can just hook it up. I mean, comes included, why not? I think it looks really good. Gives it a modern look. All right, so here's the final result. We've got the low beams on, the factory parking lights are on, Diode Elite Series, like we went over. That's a really good uniform match, in my opinion. It's not perfect. Yes, we're using HID for the low beam. We're using LED for the fog lights. But if you want a performance-oriented plug and play, you know, bang for the buck upgrade, this is it. Factory projector halogen, you know, low beams are going to mate up best with HID, and the fog lights, again, you can definitely search for a model-specific fog light housing. Even if our site or somebody's site doesn't say there is one, contact us, let us check, because a lot of these Honda and Toyota fitments fit many other models like Fords, you know, random cars. So definitely check in with us regarding what we can offer you. But hopefully this was a good illustration of why, you know, we chose the products that we did. I'll show you the output in just a moment. All right, so this is where we're ending up. I mean, completely different ball game here. Check this out. Let me turn off the Elite Series fog light assemblies so we can just zone in on the HID system. And you can see the HID system, it packs a punch right in the middle, right where you need it. That intensity zone right underneath the cutoff is exactly what's going to give you the distance that you're looking for. And at night you can see that we've got a nice amber backlight feature. And I'll turn on the lux meter and I'll get you a final measurement on the lux as well. I think we were in the 100s. Again, backlight just for looks, just as a cool thing. If we take a look at the output, the height never changed. You have a little bit of blue and purple at the cutoff line, which is cool. Factory halogen projectors. Take a look at the placement of the hotspot. We're at 715 lux. I think we're at 130 before. I mean, you can do the math. You're getting about, on average, we see HID getting about 3 times brighter than stock. LED usually gets about twice as bright as stock in a halogen projector. This clearly was even better. There's minimal light above where the squirrel finders are. I mean, that's a huge win. And let me show you what the Elite Series fog lights do. They are really crispy. You will not be blinding anybody. So you can actually see them on the wall. Before, we didn't see the factory fogs at all. Not only that, they offer a really cool color flicker effect, just like the low beams. But that sums up the video. You know, hopefully this gives you a little bit of an insight on why we choose to recommend the products that we do. Again, always go for a model specific fog light assembly upgrade if you have the ability to use one. Otherwise, if you were to use just an LED bulb, look into something like the 2-stroke 3.0 H11. They work really well in fog light assemblies. But remember, HID is king when it comes to halogen projectors and bang for the buck upgrades. Doesn't get any better. Anyhow, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, let us know what you think. I'm sure there'll be somebody that says they have an LED bulb that's better and brighter, but I've been doing this long enough to know that that's typically not the case. Of course, there are some exceptions out there, but generally speaking, no. So anyway, look forward to you guys, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for your support.